ABC News breaking coverage. That was Attorney General Merrick Garland announcing that he has appointed a special counsel to definitely determine whether criminal charges should be filed against former President Donald Trump. We now have that name of that special counsel, Jack Smith, veteran career prosecutor. Our Pierre Thomas, Chief Justice correspondent, was listening to that as well. A lot of news coming in fast. Pierre, let's start with Jack Smith. Reading through his bio right now, seeing the statement that has come from the Department of Justice. Quite a decorated background when it comes to taking on some of the biggest crimes internationally and domestically.
Well, he would be described as a veteran prosecutor, starting his career as an assistant district attorney in the New York County District Attorney's Office, then coming over to the Justice Department. I think notably he served as the chief of the Public Integrity section of the Justice Department, which looks at all aspects of public corruption. So he's got that in terms of his prosecutorial pedigree, if you will. Also, the fact that he was sent to play a key role in terms of international prosecutions is a sign that this is a person that the department has enormous respect for. But coming back to the reason why we find ourselves here today, I took note of something that Merrick Garland just said, the Attorney General. He said, quote, "This is the right thing to do," and that even though he believes the department is normally equipped to handle all manner of complicated investigations, that, quote, that in extraordinary circumstances, it requires, in some cases, for the Attorney General to appoint a special counsel. And he's describing this situation as extraordinary. Number one, because of the nature of the crimes that are being potentially investigated, Also, the fact that Donald Trump has announced that he's seeking the presidency again. And he also mentioned his boss, President Biden, as this week in that press conference, suggesting that it was his intent to run for office. So that puts the Justice Department in a position where two people, the President of the United States, the current President of the United States, will be at odds with the man that he succeeded in the job. And DOJ is now investigating someone who is probably the front runner for the Republican nomination. So, again, extraordinary day and extraordinary action by the Attorney General.
Extraordinary day indeed. Pierre, stay with me. We want to bring in Chief Washington correspondent John Carl now. John, via phone. John, Jack Smith prosecuting matters ranging from gang murders to police officers to civil rights violations to war crimes overseas. He is now coming back to be special counsel to oversee investigations surrounding someone who is running for the president of the United States. Pierre puts it perfectly. It really is an extraordinary moment to watch.
I mean, it's beyond extraordinary, and it's incredibly fraught politically. The stakes as high as you can possibly imagine. You have somebody who is a former president running for president again under not just one but multiple federal criminal investigations. It seemed to me that there was no other choice but for Merrick Garland to take this step of appointing a special counsel, and a special counsel with that kind of impeccable background. I mean, somebody who has taken on some incredibly sensitive and important cases. This is something that will really, test the strength of our criminal justice system and maybe even our democracy. I mean, to have, like I said, not just one but multiple criminal investigations of a former president trying to also become a future president, and those prosecutions being conducted by the administration of the person that he may be running against in 2024 if he were to win the Republican nomination. So it's a big moment. I can't even begin to imagine what it would look like. Now we don't know. We don't know that this will ultimately lead to indictment or indictments of Donald Trump, but it's certainly a possibility. It's certainly something that Donald Trump and people close to Donald Trump fear is coming. I mean, I've been told by at least one person very close to the former president that one of the factors pushing him to make the early announcement of his presidential campaign is he wanted to get out in front of a possible indictment so he could portray it as a political prosecution. But I mean, I can't even imagine what this all looks like. A presidential campaign happening side by side with a high profile, high stakes, maybe the most high profile, high stakes, prosecution, at least politically related prosecution of our time.
And John, you bring up a good point. Trump has always come back anytime he's accused of doing something dangerous, reckless, wrong. He will point the blame elsewhere. But this is a totally different level, legal level, political level. Could this be the first time that his typical response, that it's not his fault, not hold?
Well, we've seen the playbook. We know what he will do. We know how he will respond because he's already done it, and he's done it repeatedly in earlier circumstances where he's faced investigation. It is a witch hunt. It is political. They're coming after me because they fear me. I am a victim. I mean, that's the Trump playbook, and it's another reason why it's so important to set up why the feeling out of the Justice Department, the Attorney General, is that you needed to have some level of remove from the from the political appointees. Now that said, Kira, you remember the days when we had the independent counsel statute, and you had Ken Starr as the most high-profile independent counsel, which was an office that was truly unbeholden to the political appointees. The independent counsel basically had the power of the Attorney General to conduct these investigations. But ultimately, that act expired. You have a special counsel. A special counsel, at the end of the day, still does report to the Attorney General. He has set this up to take some of the decision-making out of his office, but in reality, he still does have the decision-making power. And
it's a good point. Pierre, how is a special counsel more isolated in this situation?
Well, in this case, the special counsel will have basically his own dedicated set of FBI agents who, in my mind, will be working solely on these two aspects of the investigation. He will have a team of his own hand-picked prosecutors that will focus solely on this. They really won't be communicating with Main Justice other than when he needs to communicate with the leadership of DOJ about something consequential that he wants to do. But I do think one difference here in how this is unfolded, that's different from the way most recent special counsels and such investigations have been conducted, is that, look, the investigation, the fact that DOJ, the Justice Department, was investigating President Trump's role and whether he had a role in terms of slowing down or trying to block the peaceful transfer of power, we have known and reported about. The fact that documents were taken from the White House to Mar-a-Lago and likely or believed to include classified documents, and there were allegations that someone at Mar-a-Lago, and now the allegation is clear that they believe the president, former president, played a role in it potentially, to block that investigation or to obstruct that investigation. Those things have been known. So that's what's unique here. DOJ is essentially saying, those two investigations that we were leading into the investigation that have gotten coverage, well, guess what? given the fact that Donald Trump is running for president, given the fact that President Biden is likely to run, we're going to create the appearance of an extra layer of independence by a special counsel to look at this and come up with recommendations on what to do and what not to do. And so in that regard, this is not new to the American public. It's just an amping up in a clarity that DOJ has come to the conclusion that there's a potential of crimes here and that someone independent, seen as more independent, needs to be the entity to look at it.
And the one question everybody is asking here, is this a moment where indictments, we could see indictments? This is not the first time that Donald Trump has been swirled within legal complications, investigations. But, you know, we're talking about somebody that has put his hat in the ring to run for president of the United States. So this takes on a different level here, doesn't it? And the thought of indictments, I mean, they could be in order.
Well, I'm going to go back to something the Attorney General Merrick Garland says often. They will speak in court. And on a case like this, they know that whatever they decide to do, if they were to bring charges, and I would say that's a consequential if at this point, it's going to have to be unassailable. It's going to have to be clear-cut. It's going to have to be beyond any kind of, you know, reasonable expectation that they could walk away from it, and that they would believe that they would have an incredible likelihood that they could win such a prosecution. So that's the standard that we're looking at here. And in both these cases, in terms of what did the president know and or do in connection with the certification or efforts around stopping Joe Biden from being certified as president, and what did he do specifically in terms of the documents that were taken from the White House down to Mar-a-Lago? Those are the key questions, and on some levels, they have relatively simple answers.
Point well made. Kimberly Whaley, this is your legal expertise when talking about could indictments be in order. To play off what Pierre just said, can special counsel meet that standard? Do you see indictments coming forward here?
Two different questions there. One is, can the special counsel meet that standard? And I'm with agreement with many former DOJ people that the publicly available information is likely sufficient for purposes of justifying indictments. Some people focus on, oh, well, there needs to be more evidence of intent. But, you know, when it comes to January 6th, we have the committee hearings. That was just a slice of information that they've gathered by former prosecutors for the United States Congress, all of which was handed over, or I should say some of which, presumably most of it, which was handed over to DOJ. So that's question number one. Question number two is there a political appetite to do that? And as you indicate, this is stunning in that you're going to have, one thing's for sure, we know now in writing, because to create a special counsel, you have to identify their jurisdiction. And as Pierre says, we now have in writing that the Justice Department is investigating Donald Trump. Mr. Garland said that the on-the-ground people are going to stay with the local prosecutor's office here in Washington. So they've drawn that red line in the sand. And then the question is, do they have the appetite politically, given that Joe Biden is still heading the executive branch, to potentially be prosecuting not just a former president, that was last week, but someone who could be at the top of the Republican ticket running against the incumbent, who is technically in charge of the Justice Department. It is, you know, a law professor, it's a law school hypo that I wouldn't dare to even draft because the students would think it could never happen, and here we are in this moment. But as I said earlier, I don't think, given how much information they already had, that Merrick Garland would take this step just on a whim, on a guess, that maybe something could be produced out of this investigation that would include high-level indictments. He's made very clear in his public statements, no favor for anyone based on power, no favor for, you know, certain people in the chain of command. He mentioned again today, this is about the law and this is about the facts. And that he also mentioned the word expeditiously. So if people are worried this is a delay tactic, I think he signaled no. They are marching forward where the law and the facts take them. And presumably he chose Jack Smith with the understanding that Smith is not going to make this decision out of politics. I think it's very interesting. He's been in Europe, in Kosovo for the past 4 years. He hasn't been embroiled in the political maelstrom that many of us who live outside of Washington have been. This man has been doing other stuff, international stuff, and he's going to come back in to step in, frankly, in a place where democracy really needs some shoring up in this moment.
John Carl, considering what Kimberly just said, you have written books on Trump, you have covered Trump, you are our chief Washington correspondent. Do you believe, by what you know, what you've covered, what has been exposed to this point, and the fact that Merrick Garland is coming forward, making this announcement, that the evidence is indeed there to move forward with high-level indictments?
Well, I come back to something that Merrick Garland said not all that long ago when he was asked about this possibility, and he said, and he repeated the line, no one is above the law. No one is above the law. That includes a former president and a presidential candidate. As for whether or not there is the evidence to move forward with indictment, I can't opine on that, but watching what Garland did here, listening to his past statements, it sure feels to me like we are moving towards a situation where there will be, or where indictments of the former president are a very real possibility. It seems to be more and more so with each new development, especially today's. And that, Kira, raises to me the kind of almost mind-boggling possibility that we see a criminal prosecution unfolding simultaneous to a political campaign. And if you start looking at the calendar and you start thinking about how long it takes to get to a point of an indictment, and how long it takes to get past an indictment to a trial and a conviction, I mean, are we going to see a situation where a criminal trial is happening simultaneous with the New Hampshire primary, where jury deliberations are happening simultaneous with a Republican convention? I mean, these are not inconceivable. We're sitting here on a verdict while we're also waiting on the final delegate count. I mean, it's something far beyond. I mean, we used the word extraordinary before. It's beyond anything we have ever seen in American history. And I don't know how that all plays out. This is not simply a question of evidence and criminal procedure. This gets at the heart of our political process as well.
Follow up with that, John, the point that, criminal charges, the special counsel, all of this happening during a political campaign. And like you pointed out, how long this process could take just by essence of what we're dealing with here. Could this drag all the way to the point of when we are voting for president? I mean, how long are we talking about? I mean, could this be happening over the next 2 years? Or do you foresee, because of what you said about Merrick Garland saying we want to move expeditiously here, would the plan be to get this wrapped up and decided before we know who is going to be president of the United States in 2024?
Well, taking Garland at his word here, that as Pierre said, he will speak through their court filings. No person is above the law. They're not going to deal with this any differently than they would any other criminal process. I think that's why he did what he did today. He cannot put his thumb on the scale here, and he can't say he's going to act differently because of who the person is, who is the potential target here. I mean, he can't say we're going to speed this up. We're going to go, expeditious is one thing, but he's not going to be cutting corners. He can't. So I think the collision course that this is on with the political process is unavoidable. And you raise an interesting question. What if you're like almost done? If you're at the point of a trial while a general election is underway. I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves, to be sure, but these are not purely hypothetical questions anymore.
If there's one thing we have learned about Donald Trump, you cannot expect anything. You never know what is going to happen, and we are seeing it again, John, right now. Investigative reporter Aaron Katersky now on the phone with us, no, we have you live. Excellent. So John was talking about, Aaron, that we know the Trump playbook, that when he has hit tough times, we know what he's going to say. It's political sabotage. It's a witch hunt. He's the victim. But we're talking about a whole different battlefield here with different soldiers and different possible outcomes, and that Trump can't cut corners here. How do you see this as someone also that has covered all the investigations, has covered Trump, and now we have just gotten to this extraordinary position?
Trump's protestations have not worked in cases that are already underway, Kira. He has protested about a witch hunt and even racial animus and political injustification by the New York Attorney General. And the judge rejected that and allowed her $250 million lawsuit to go forward. He's complained about the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which has an ongoing trial against the Trump organization as we speak. Those cases are moving ahead. Here, in appointing a special counsel, the Attorney General has turned to someone that he hopes will be inoculated from political criticism. Jack Smith was part of the District Attorney's Office in Manhattan under Robert Morgenthau, the legendary District Attorney. He then moved to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Brooklyn, where he was the lead prosecutor on one of the highest profile cases of its time in 2006, a gangbanger who was sentenced to the death penalty for the killings of 2 NYPD detectives. And then he took those talents to The Hague to become a war crimes prosecutor. This is someone whose career has operated outside politics, now being brought to bear in a very political minefield, Kira.
Do you think Merrick Garland went further than he needed to go?
Garland's a judge and perhaps was reading a statute that said a special counsel shall be appointed in these kinds of cases. Maybe he went beyond where that statute required him to go, but he clearly felt that, as he put it, the public interest depended on an appointment of a special counsel to make sure that the public could have confidence in the integrity of the investigations and any criminal charges that might result. And I thought it was noteworthy that Garland mentioned obstruction in both connection with the January 6th investigation and with the investigation into classified documents that were found at Mar-a-Lago. The notion of obstruction, many legal analysts have said, would be perhaps more to the point than actually charging Trump with the crimes themselves.
Aaron, thank you. Political Director Rick Klein, I want to take the same question to you as you have followed every minute of the Trump presidency, into the investigations, up to the fact that he's throwing his hat in the ring for a third bid to be our president once again. Do you see, as you listen to Merrick Garland, you listen closely to the words, you know the background of this special counsel that has been appointed, there's no room for Trump to cut corners here. Do you foresee that Garland is pretty confident that there is evidence here that could very much lead to high-level indictments? And then as we go forward, this is going to be quite an interesting 2 years.
I think it's clear that if he didn't think there was anything worth doing, he wouldn't take this extraordinary step. And likewise, if they had enough evidence, as Pierre said earlier, they would speak in court as opposed to through the prosecutors. We just saw a statement from Jack Smith where he's promising to keep the pace up, to work expeditiously. I think that is intended in part to answer the potential critique that this is going to spill over into some kind of indefinite potential prosecution, just kind of lingering out there. I think Garland saw the exact timeline that John Karl was talking about and saying, look, it's not going to get further away from the election. We now have a declared candidate for president in addition to a current president who says he's going to run again. So seeing those trains collide down the road made him want to set up this separate set of tracks. And I do think, to your question earlier, he went further than he needed to do, but he is very clear that he wants this to be done by the books.
Extraordinary day, an extraordinary moment in political history. Rick Klein, thank you so much. We are going to continue our breaking news coverage throughout the day.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.